I should just give a acknowledgement as to why I have been able to put this presentation together. I have to admit that when I apply for grants to American Scandinavian Foundation, it's a little bit of creative writing because I have a great longing to go back to Norway. But I just remembered so much of my earlier experiences and really wanted to dig deeper into the stories, the anecdotes, and go back to the people that I knew then and ask even more questions. So with a folk arts grant to collect stories and also folk songs, specifically about immigration and the life of the cotters, I put together an application and they supported that. The rest of the work was kind of self-supported by wonderful people that, bought some of the paintings along the way, helped me to be able to spend long extended summers to be in Bøverdalen and paint to my heart's delight. So this is the result of that and the various forms of support that I've received to be able to do this. Last night I was at Luther College with Simra, and I was feeling a bit apologetic about not being an academic. I've always been an artist and a singer, little too restless to sit on a school bench or go to college, really. I was fortunate to be able to learn while doing at the Art Academy. And then the rest that I learned would be through, listening, conversations, curiosity, just picking up things and trying to connect the dots as I went along. So this presentation is based on, I guess you'd call it oral history. The conversations that I had with people in Bøverdalen. I want to especially thank Jarnfrid Sjøk. She is a brilliant historian that has done so much research. But not only that, she comes from a family of traditional folk musicians. Her father, her brother, now her young nieces are just fabulous musicians. Her family took care of a book that her grandmother made, listing the lyrics to so many songs. I mean, what a treasure trove that is to have. So Jarnfrid is the type of person that young folk singers will seek out to learn the songs from. So I've had marvelous conversations with her, and she has taught me songs that I will be able to share with you today. The other is the reading that I did on my own. Well, I have to credit Jarnfrid again. She printed off some pretty interesting pages by Eilert Sundt. He was a pastor, but probably the first, I'm not sure what to call him, a social anthropologist or sociologist who tried to collect data from the countryside, as to just exactly what was the plight of the working people in rural Norway and how might their situation be improved. So she has provided me with some reading material there. And then the other that I like to cite is Tor Jonsson, a poet, a journalist, and one who is heralded as being the voice of the downtrodden. There are not so many such voices. So it's a combination of those things that I've put together some anecdotes for you to share today. The first image, this is Vesterheim, which literally means home of the avalanche. And that's the hotel that I worked at. It was a functioning farm. Frankly, it wasn't worked as a farm until about 1950 or so. And it was in 1868, it also functioned as a hotel or a stagecoach station. And that would have been for the adventurous wealthy from England and Germany that wanted to experience the folk life in rural Norway, had sort of a romantic idea about that. And so they would, take a horse and carriage, a nice long ride over Sognefjell from the western coast, and then you would land at the bottom of Sognefjell. That then you would find Reisheim, where you would get a comfortable bed and marvelous meals. So anyway, the reason I'm so captivated by just this little area was that half of the people left. They left in 1920. Then the second wave left in 1950 after their aunts and uncles had established themselves and they could send money for a ticket, and more people came. So I will start with my translation of Farvel du Moder Norge, farewell to Mother Norway.
So we're just going to keep talking. We're just making sure the folks at home can see the slides.
Oh, good. All right. That's important. I have to admit, I learned this song a long time ago and have remembered the melody incorrectly. So this is the folk process. I sort of made a bit of my own melody to this song, but it is very well known. There is a genre called immigrant propaganda songs. Either for or against immigration. So this one, to me, it sounds very, very realistic, very sentimental, but there's also sort of the message, how could you possibly leave? So it goes like this. Farewell to Norway, motherland. I now will leave my home. I want to give so many thanks for how you made me grow. You had so little food to eat for all your workers small, but to your educated sons, you gave them most of all. I love you so, dear Norway, with mountains and waters blue. I hardly want to leave you for western lands the new. But when it comes to eating, I must do what is best. We are like so many birds that are forced to leave their nest. I migrate like the swallow away to a strange land, over the great ocean in search for the new land. There we will find food enough with hard work as we pray. We're thankful to Columbus for showing us the way. I'm sure you're all thinking about the Vikings, right? In one of these valleys there stood my cradle small. I was just a child at play, herding sheeps into the stall. There I plucked the many stones, and I picked the berries sweet. There is no other place on earth that could cause my heart to beat. Just as I start my journey from fatherland and home, tears are streaming down my face, my heartstrings hurting so. I turn my face towards the road, just one more time to see the family farm upon the land that once belonged to me. One by one and more arrive to the harbor in the town. My heart ached so heavily as I looked all around. I am now without a home, an immigrant I am. joining both the young and old, cross the sea to our new land. We all became such caring friends, a country all our own. Together o'er the ocean, in the west we'll build a home. Then we prayed together, "O Lord, please be us near." We climbed on board the steamship that waited at the pier. The captain walked the gangplank and machines began to roar. We were waving hats in hand to those standing on the shore. Farewell to Norway's rocky coast, farewell to Norway dear. I'm certain that I'll never, ever come again back here. My heart was full of sorrow as I gazed out from the rail. I watched as dear old Norway's colors became pale. Off in the horizon, I watched her disappear. In the distance and in silence, 'twas the land I held so dear. I thought about my father and my mother's place of birth, the fact that they would all too soon lie buried in the earth. A cross will show exactly where I would find the place where my mother and my father had carefully been placed. And should I have good fortune in this lifetime to return, I would come back to this place where my heart is not alone. It's where I saw the sunrise for the first time with my eyes. Such memories deeply hidden, wrapped in longing all my life. Just terrible. And so, yeah, what a brave and bold thing to immigrate at all. So now, and let's see. So good to have an assistant. I am so fortunate. There we go. There we go. So this mountain has a name. It's called Flåskin, and that would be sort of at the back wall of Bøverdalen. I kind of thought of it as magical sliding doors, and that I had entered this magical valley the way the Pied Piper had all the children follow him, and I just didn't want to leave. But it's really tight, to turn that corner there where the mountains meet. And to me, this area was just a world unto itself. So I did mention that half of the population there left. There's basically 4 large farms, 4 or 5. Vesterheim was the neighbor, and then there's Gaupad that had many cotters farms. Then there's 2 next to each other, Surheim and Uppegaard Surheim. And then, further down, I think it's called Holte. So those would be the larger farmers, and right down at the bottom where there's relatively flat land, and then the cotters would be on a slant that you could almost stand on, and where they were able to put a little house and have maybe a little barn for gotta have a cow for milk, right? If you're lucky. So if you're a cotter, You either simply had a house to rent, while you worked for the larger farmers, or you had a little extra so that you could supply yourself with some basic needs. And then in return, you worked 3 to 4 days of the week. You had some time to have shall we say, a side hustle, maybe, what's it called? They could have been a blacksmith, a shoemaker, carpenter, be put to work in other ways. But the work was endless. There was always work to be done, and rather difficult to save anything to perhaps travel at all. I'm not sure how they were even able to afford traveling to the United States. There are stories of these very dramatic auctions, where they auctioned off everything that they had in order to go. I did want to try to point out two. I think that is the set they call Hovda high up there. I don't know. You can't wiggle it again. Do we have see that right up there? That's a mountain shelf with a little home, and you can see the 2 colors of green. Where they're cutting grass, and maybe it was grain on the other side, and then a little further down is another one. So there you have 2 little mountain places on a shelf there. Yeah, no, I was thinking about the cook at the hotel. They made me work in the kitchen because she said, Arna, if you're going to get an art education, you'll learn nothing of any use. So you're going to work in the kitchen. And there I was, carefully skinning the salt herring and peeling potatoes and cleaning the fish, and learn how to bake bread and soups and sauces and such. She was right. But she also wanted to encourage me to find a local fella. And she says, Arna, you've got to find a guy with a view. And I said, I think I'd like a guy with a viewpoint, is what I said at the time. So maybe I regret it. I don't know. But at any rate, this has just always captured my imagination. The colors ever changing. Every time I ran out to put the clothes on the line to dry, I would see this incredibly intense blue change and the facets of the mountain coming forth. So this is beautiful Bøverdalen, and I wonder how could people leave, and then just more questions about why. So there we go. So this is another view of the hotel, and still again you see that ever blue mountain Flåsjön looking at us. But this is Reisheim, and very close to us was the stall, and then there's the Stabbur. And in the old days, they had the root cellar. It's called Aurbuloftet. Aurbu means it was just a dirt floor, a cold cellar, root cellar for the potatoes and carrots to be stored. And then they had the workers sleeping up on the the second floor. And now they have what they call a himmelseng, a heavenly bed with a canopy, and it's just quite luxurious today. Very comfortable and traditional, but with luxury, very different than it was in the day. When I visited again this past summer, I found these portraits on display of the last family, the last members of the lineage of the Reisheim family. And so we have Ola Reisheim, and then up on top here, this is Tore is her name. The oldest sister is Svanhild, and I think she was in charge in the kitchen. I got to see her handwritten menus that she had. It's quite interesting. I mean, they aspired to some fine dining there. And then there is Brita down at the bottom. Oh, wow. I suppose I should point this like a rock singer would. That might help. Yeah, so these are the four siblings, the last in the line of the family. I personally find it, a little sad. There were no children. There were no marriages among these four siblings. Ola Reisheim was different than most of the farmers, the people in the valley. He had his special tastes. He would listen to classical music on his gramophone player and did not go to the dances where there were fiddle players and more of the local folk life. And it was understood that he was gay and that he had a love interest, but his sisters made sure, they tried very hard to make sure that he did not act on his inclinations. And then, according to Sølvi is the daughter of the cook, so I went back to talk with her, my beloved, dear mentor and friend and boss, Inga Olsen, at the hotel. She passed away a number of years ago, but it is so heartwarming to visit Sølvi. And Sølvi lives in the house now, currently, where the sisters kind of retired and lived. And a lot of things didn't disappear from the estate. There are piles of letters, and among them are the letters between Tore and a young man that was in love with her, that had proposed to her, that wanted to marry her, and that her parents would not accept. And the way other, farmers down the valley would refer to it, there was no one good enough. So, there is sort of an understandable thing of marrying within your station and, what this kind of transactional with property and valuables, coming into equal hands of that. But also in this case, there was a bit of an attitude about just who is good enough and in what way. So Sølvi burnt the letters. They were, very, very private, very heartfelt, and probably heart-wrenching. She burnt them. They're not left for us to view, this story in history. And he then decided to leave for America, to immigrate to the United States. And this was not uncommon. I have my data from my vast collection of folk songs. And there is a common theme. When people leave too, a sentiment that's often shared is, we'll meet again in heaven. Okay, so this particular folk song I learned when I was in Raudan. It's from Telemark and called Folkestavisa. And today I'll do the first verse in dialect in Norwegian, and then I will share my translation with you. It goes like this. Med had jeg sett deg vise vil jeg kvea. Kan hende at den kjenner sangen min. Jeg vet ikke om det gir deg sorg til gleda. Kan hende jeg glad over hugen din. As here I sit, I'll share with you my story. Could be you've heard it once before. I don't know if it brings you smiles or sorrow. Perhaps thoughts of me live in your mind no more. High in the mountains mountains, my mind finds room to wander. I see Norway, my true home. My heart weighs heavily the times I ponder. Will I forget or wither as I roam? I'm setting out for America in springtime and forget all sorrows caused to me. To leave my home is nothing less than painful. Many tears are washed away by the sea. Purple mountains, blue skies washed together. My eyes see wonders, wonders, so it seems. Without you, it really has no meaning. You own my heart, my prayers, and my dreams. So if we never again on earth encounter one another, you and me, my friend, may we meet when we are both in heaven. In the light, I'll see you once again. Oh, I'm having a hard time getting through these. Oh my. Oh, thank you. Yeah, let's see. Where are we now? There we go. I am so pleased to have these images. This is the little guy in front there is the husband of the cook. His name is Ragnvald Olsen, and he was kind of short, but nothing like that. There's good reason here. And his mother, it was called Ture, and so there were a total of 5 children. There was 1 girl, 4 brothers. And this is a picture from outside the Cotter's farm, and that would have been across the road on the hillside. And to this day, you can still see the stone foundation. The building itself is not there at this time. And the unfortunate situation was that their father died suddenly at the age of 50. And the consequence of that is that suddenly the family was displaced because you didn't have the agreement, renting to somebody that worked on the farm and provided a service. And just received, for his work, just received enough compensation to live there, more or less a trade-off. And so what happens then when, they just can cancel the living agreement, and that's not uncommon. That happened to many. So Ture, you can see her. She's in the farmyard, or the courtyard of the Hotel Vesterheim there, and she did, work for them at the hotel. Later, Inga, she was one of the housemaids cleaning, and I was surprised. It was my she was a young person, this educated cook that took over, but the two of them worked together, and gradually Inga became such a superb chef and a cook. But so it was her mother-in-law that worked there at Reisheim, at least trying to earn something to feed the children. So as it were, so when you get displaced, there is a system they call leid. I'm not entirely sure what the words means, but it sounds like you are farmed out. you're in the care. Maybe we could think of it as a form of foster care, or kind of farmed out. You're being taken care of on a farm. And then the system. I have to admit, I was a little triggered by the word. You're basically auctioned off. And that was, like which farm will take you in at what cost. So the low bid would then get some compensation from what they called fattigkassa. And that would be the pot of money for the poor, that there was a certain amount of tax, there was a set aside for it, but this is how it was then distributed or taken care of. But she had then 3 sons that immigrated to North Dakota and did well on their farms there, and were able to buy a small house for her. And that small house was called Skredderstugge, and that is the tailor's house. It was small, and I loved visiting. Later it was the cook and her husband lived there. Small, and then added on a bit, but perfectly comfortable. And I just think it's wonderful that the sons that immigrated were able to then buy a home for their mother. Also, that's not uncommon. You probably have stories within your own families, the kind of assistance that you might lend to your extended family. So there you have it. But no, I just can't imagine being in that dire situation and the upheaval and disruption in one's life, and then how you gradually find your way from that kind of challenge. Here we go. So I have to admit, this is probably my favorite place on earth. This is Bøverdalen, and that is a cotter's farm that belonged to the farm named Gaupad. And they had several. They had several in a row. So next to Bøverdalen is also Tande and Lunna. And but this one is extra special because it has sunlight all the year round. These steep mountains, lights were out at Reisen at 4 p.m. in the summer because it blocked the sun. But up here you could have sunlight the whole time. So, and to this day, it is just the most well-kept pearl of this type of farm. And it had 2 houses, one for the current generation, one for the older generation. You get an idea up in the corner. I guess I'm blocking some of it, but that was a large extended family up there. And, if they had people that could continue contributing work to the main farm, Gaupad, you could stay, but you might come into the situation where you can't feed all the children, in which case, if they're young, they could be placed on a farm. And when you're 14, you're expected to simply go out on your own and get a job. You are confirmed and considered an adult. So, so I just look at that large family and think of them. I can't quite point to one of them. Yes, I can. Cod in Bøverdalen. She was older and lived in a small house down the road from Reisen, and I could go and visit with her. But apparently, even in more recent years, she would move from place to place, not really having a set place in her old age to stay. that she was using what they called the prayer house that was established down the road. So, I have an anecdote from Eilert Sundt. I think I told you he was a pastor and was getting all of this data and stories about what was the actual situation for people in the countryside. So I'm not saying it was exactly like that for these people, but it was from the same area. And this would have been around 1856. Let's hope that it continually improved. But this is a quote from his findings. "What have your children eaten today?" Mother looked at the clock that struck 12. "Nothing today." "Oh, nothing?" "Absolutely nothing. They got a drop of coffee and some cold potatoes from yesterday." "You mean no porridge? You don't have flour for porridge or bread? Let's look in the food pantry." She opened the door and there was a little coffee and some potatoes. All the containers were empty. "Last fall we slaughtered a pig, but that's been used up a long time ago. For milk, one has to beg and pay, and most feel that they have to keep it for themselves. So it was even hard to buy milk if you needed to. And bread is so expensive. We bake bread from bark and mean meal. Where are your Sunday clothes? We own no more than what we have on. Yeah, which was pretty common. Are you familiar with from Gudbrandsdalen? It's called the Rondastak, and it has the Sinclair plaid, red plaid on the top, and then it has a striped skirt. Okay, so that was used for everyday work. That was also used on Sunday and special occasions. You had only one dress, basically. But the difference being during the work week, you had a blue work shirt and not so attractive apron. And come Sunday, you would change it out with a white linen blouse for going to church. Yup. So that's what they did. I feel so honored to get to know. He was probably in his 70s, Lars Bacon, and that would have been the grandchild, kind of last in line of those that lived on this farm. He said he never lived there himself, but he had been there quite a bit and certainly had all the contact with the family. And this would have been his great uncle, I believe. The thing is, he immigrated. Now, he had several brothers, right? So there was an older one named Lars that continued to work on that small farm. And then the other brothers had to find their own way. And this is Jakob, who emigrated to the U.S. And then they opened up their house. They showed me the big image of all the soldiers. So he enlisted. He was part of the World War I, and from that he earned a pension, and in that way was able to save and better himself. And his heart and mindset was to return to this valley and to be able to get land that was his own. That was like such an important thing, to one's identity and sense of self and worth, was to own your own land. So, has anybody been in Bøverdalen or up to Vesterheim?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you're familiar with Vesterheim? That goes all the way into...
So much. My mother's mother and mother's father were both from High Dollar, A Dollar.
Okay.
And so I've been in that area and stayed with them many times and explored in the area.
Wow.
But, that was back in the 1990s up till about 2017.
Okay. So one of our, I'm just reiterating for the people on our Zoom call that we have a guest that is familiar with Heidal and the area. But if there's any tourists that love to do mountain climbing, they would take that long, winding valley road deep into the valley, and you're right at the foothills of the highest mountains in Norway. So you're at the foothills of Galdhøpiggen and Glittertind, and this network of hiking trails and direction to these adventuresome points. Well, so Jakob Bakum, then first he bought a proper farm, the neighboring farm to Reisheim, but then along comes the Odelsgut, a relative that decided he wanted to have it and had the right, because of the family lineage, that it should go to him. So he had to basically sell it back to him. But he was able to get a plot of land deep in that valley by the highest mountains. And it was a seter, and this is where they would do summer grazing. But he cleared land. He rebuilt and reinforced the house and the barn, and just really did such a valiant, giant effort to make that very livable. And I suppose livable means turning some kind of profit. But he lived there year round, which was unheard of prior to that time, because it's very high altitude and in this area that was mainly thought of for adventuresome tourists, But he lived there all year round and managed somehow. So I think it's written all over his face. I absolutely love this portrait of Jakob Bakum. And vicariously, I feel like I know him somewhat. So, okay, now we get to Vesterheim. And I had the pleasure of, getting to know people on the neighboring farms. And, well, to be honest, I got to know two young men by hitchhiking back and forth because I was looking for a dance and there wasn't a dance. And, we just, from that time, just hit it off and became friends. And I went back 7 summers, so I, kind of really reinforced those friendships and was able to be invited to the home and talk with the family members through the years. So, I feel very honored, almost as a part of the family. I know all the siblings and the parents and the current generation. So, but Vesterheim is one of the oldest farms. The family has continuously lived there and worked the farm since the 1100s. Yeah, which is a bit unusual. I know Reisheim was owned by a bishop for a while. And, these places may have changed hands. When you have the name Heim, like Reisheim and Surheim, that's an indication of really being one of the older farms, like even predating Viking age. So when they plowed, his dad would find, these fertility stones, and when they were repairing the floor and looking under the boards, they'd find a Viking age axe, that kind of thing. It's just an endless treasure trove. And so in 1923, it was put on the National Historic Preservation list. And I think that was probably a result of the time national romanticism and, really trying to take care of their heritage and the powerful identity and stories of the mountain farmers. Pretty much they're heralded as the heroes or the prototype of, good people. Folk music is based on that. National romanticism is all that we learned, and poems written about this type of life. It came from that period of time. So I could easily say it's the backbone of the national identity. So these houses, they don't date back as far as I mentioned. They're generally from the 1600s, the large, the two main ones there. The barns are from 1672 and 1780, and they have been upgraded and modernized inside, so it's a very well-functioning farm this day today. They had modern silos that were built inside. And so Christian Surheim, he became the first director of Norsk Kulturarv, Norwegian cultural heritage, that just really work to support those that have these historical farms, how to keep them, how to we had to lobby for some support. There was never quite adequate support to keep everything updated and strong and functioning. And he started promoting cultural tourism. And oops, I was going to walk away. I can use my pointer, can't I? Here we go. Here's the pointer. So he very cleverly moved a log house from Skjåk, the neighboring valley, and then had it, rebuilt on his property like Lincoln logs, and now has 4 or 5 beautifully renovated apartments that can be rented out to tourists at this time. And so there's many others that have followed suit and do that kind of cultural tourism. Really, really quite ingenious. I was going to point out in the farmyard, the large stabbur, the food storage houses. There is one. There's another one further down, and lots of food had to be made. Flatbread, right? The dry goods, flatbread, lefse, that sort of thing. You had to have enough of that to feed the workers. So he would describe the life on that farm as just a constant effort to be able to feed everybody. Now, here are some of the curious features that he showed me. The one house is called, he wanted me to call it the Sovestue, and it is from 1253. One of the absolute oldest buildings in Norway. It does not have windows. It does not have a chimney, indicating that there was a fireplace or anything. But this is the house that was used to allow workers to sleep. And in the day, it would be 4 in a bed. They were generally short beds and would sit somewhat upright. That was just their way. And so I have to tell you, he first, if it was kind of, teasing or semi-joking, he first showed it to me and said that it was træl. Træl being another word for a slave. I go, what? Slaves in a mountain valley? I have heard that Vikings had them, but in what way? And where'd they come from? But basically, he was indicating the various levels of workers that they had. So there would be day laborers. The ones that were housed there, what they had for their work was payment with a roof over their head, food, clothing, and shoes. And then I asked, what? No money? And he said, there was little money in those days, and you didn't have much use for it. It was more important to have a roof, food, clothing, and shoes. So that was the description that he gave me for the condition of the workers that participated on the farm. Then there's another curious thing that he showed me just a couple of years ago, and that is the step ladder that is tucked behind the fireplace, and they call it Jungfrubur, the Virgin's Loft. And there was a certain status, like who would they hire to work inside the farmhouse? So you think of a girl that is 14 years old, confirmed, and probably coming from a, not the poorest cotter's farm, but a small farm. She would, be prioritized over others to get a position inside the farmhouse. And in order to keep her away from the lowly boys that worked in the barn or the field, they didn't want her passing through the farmyard or being out and about. So she stayed in the house. And then the way she would, get to her own little bedroom was to climb that ladder, the secret door there behind the fireplace. So anyway, I mentioned the poet Tore Jonsson, and he has a poet that, I think of a girl that is in that situation, working at the farm there. And I loved folk dancing, fiddle playing, all of that. It was alive and well those years that I worked at the hotel. And so I can just imagine this type of scenario that he describes in this poem. It goes like this. It's a poem called Wild Guri, name of a girl. Wild Guri, dance while the fiddle plays, dance in fields of grass and hay, dance over the mountains in summer's eve. Wild Guri, forget your heart filled with pain, sun in your hair is all that remains. Forget you are poor for tonight. Forget you are homeless in a stranger's farm. Forget pain that is now. Forget pain that was. For this summer's night is mine and yours. You received life from the sun breaking through the clouds. With heavy gray skies and fog rolling through, dance over the mountains this summer's eve. Oh, I get goosebumps. I don't know. Oh, okay. Now, this, I am so grateful to Christian for sending me the picture of his great-grandfather. And this fellow was reported to the local authorities, to the sheriff, and fined because he sat at the same table and ate the same food as the workers on the farm. Or that would mean, that the farmhands were fed equally as good food as the farmer himself. And that caused a bit of unrest in the valley. And when workers on other farms heard about this, they started to grumble and complain and, would much prefer to get a job there. So then it was the other local farmers that reported him for causing this trouble. And so he was fined for doing this. And then I took a picture of this long wooden table that would have been the table where they all sat together and ate food together. I remember talking with Christian. Well, his sister, she knew all about how to survive on no money. And she made what they called vasgraut, water porridge out of barley meal. So when she knew she was going to be broke for a while, she would buy a bag of barley and boil it up in water And you could serve it different ways. It could be with sugar, cinnamon, and butter, or it could be salt and pepper. It could be anything you wanted. It was just this nasty gray mass, basically. And so, she and her siblings would say, Arna, you need soon, boom, the vet. You have to have farmer smarts for how to survive. And what do you do when you have little money for food? So, but that was the type of thing that she learned on the farm. And that was the type of food that was probably, served to the workers on the farm. I remember too, instead of cornflakes, they used to just help themselves to flatbread and put buttermilk all over it and sugar and cinnamon. And it was that kind of food, for the different times of the day and when you had a snack and when you had a little more of a meal. So, and once again here, I have a quote from Tor Jonsson, the poet. And so this is what he said. He said, "We know that the relationship between the cotter and the farmer generally has been good, or more correctly, the relationship had to be good, though the life of the cotter was ever so pitiful. There is not the same division between the cotter and the farmer as between the worker and the factory owner today. The cotter and the farmer shoveled manure together, and they ate at the same table, but still, between these two was an abyss so wide that no one could build a bridge between. The source of this gulf is the sense of lineage, as well as inherited condescension and disdain for poverty and the poor. To be poor is not simply unfortunate, it is a boundless shame. In the view of cotters, one can sense the spirit from an earlier time without a sense of human value, and to this very day, one can sense this attitude in closed-off villages." It just stopped me in my tracks when I read that about this, the sense of boundless shame, or kind of what is your self-identity or self-esteem or self-worth, or so I'm just going to breathe in on that one and move further. And there's still more quotes from him, and I just was jogged at all of the examples that he brought forth. And like I said, I'm the type of person, I am interested in various things. It might be religion, it might be politics, it might be a poet, it might be folk songs, it might be the conversations I have with people. And here's, there's a few ideas that I was hearing more and more that I'll share with you now. So this is a picture of Lone Stave Church, and so what my notes here, one would expect from the church that teaches, this is paraphrasing Tor Jonsson, all are equal in the eyes of God, that one would implement the same view in their daily life. Tor Jonsson referred to church records in his essays about the old farming society and the value of a human being with this example. And this is the record of deaths, for the graveyard. And there's a person referred to as half Christian, period, poor, or simply legged. And this would be an anonymous person that is farmed out. Not even given a name in the records. He also referred to a common saying among the large farm owners that, they were better off in the day before people ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They were less demanding then. So the workers, they were, oftentimes praised as being very hardworking. In addition, it was looked upon as a virtue to be happy with very little. But in reality, according to Tore Jonsson, was that they were people with broken spirits and resignation. Oops. There we go. And this is my last my last slide. So Storstabud, this is the largest food storage house in Norway, built in the 1500s. And I had always assumed it was there to serve the community. But it was all collected for the priest and the king. Not to mention, they had both the church and the king had such incredibly vast land holdings. So I hope that I, shed some light on, perspectives about the conditions at the time of pretty much mass immigration. Maybe brought to light a little more of the realities that, we understand that people were poor, or there was, sudden overpopulation. Oh, thanks to the potato. Healthier and having potatoes. But that there were conditions that, eventually gradually changed in Norway as well. The cotter system was abolished or done away with in the 20s. Then, with legislation, there were created banks with very favorable rates to assist a small farmer to be able to own the small cotter's farm and call it his own. But anyway, so in my mind, the dots that I was putting together was not only was there just actual poverty, but a part of it was the belief system also that holds people back. Tore Jonsson said, what a waste of potential in all people. And, if there was resignation there was a lot of, it's just how it is, there will always be poor, and we need the poor, that type of attitude. And then were those the brave and the daring immigrants that set out to create their own lives. And part of the immigration in our country that I appreciate all the more would be, the opportunity to self-actualize, to really build something. And Luther College and Vesterheim, what incredible testimony to that type of initiative. So in my mind, I'd always thought that the sense of, respect for the equality of all humans was a spiritual value. In practical terms, it became more of a mainstream idea in Norway or European countries through the labor movement and socialist thinking, that they had equal value and their lives should be, respect worthy and with a certain level of decency. So that was that. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm open to questions and comments. But I thought we could end by singing Oliana. And in my my reading, I found a slant. I mentioned that there's this genre of immigrant propaganda songs. What was written about this song was that it was meant to ridicule the immigrants for being naive and expecting so much more than they, possibly could accomplish, and that they're naive for leaving Norway. So that just gave it a little different slant for me when I read it. I thought, well, what do they understand? So it goes like this, and please join me in the chorus. To be in Oleana, that's where I'd like to be. Then be bound in Norway, dragging chains of slavery. Oleana, Oleana, Oleana. In Oleana land is free, the crops just plant themselves. They grow a good 4 feet a day when you just rest yourself. Oleana, Oleana, Oleana. The little roasted piggies rush around the city streets and ask you so politely if some ham you'd like to eat. Oleana, Oleana, Oleana. If you are dreaming big to Oleana, you must go. The poorest wretch from Norway becomes a duke in a year or so. Oleana, Oleana, Oleana. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Arna. It's so wonderful to get some more rich context for your beautiful images. What we're going to do now is to take a couple questions from our friends on Zoom, and then we'll end our Zoom call and we'll continue to do some questions here for folks in person. But before I take a few questions from Zoom, we want to be sure to thank my colleague Lauren for helping behind the scenes for all of this. We haven't done very many hybrid events, so we're happy to have your comments to know how to go forward with these. And also wanted to be sure again to thank the generous sponsors for the 7 Summers exhibition, Barbara and Dale Henning. So from our Zoom friends, one of the questions is about where in the United States many of these people from Bøverdalen settled. Do you know where that would be?
I wish I knew more specifically. I have been a guide for Norwegian tourists, and that would be, through the Midwest. I happen to know Fergus Falls. I think that's where they founded Gudbrandsdalslaget, and there happens to be an awful lot of people from the area there. And then I've anecdotally, heard of North Dakota, and even Christian's dad referred to, relatives that they had in North Dakota. I think his brother visited a relative at Devil's Lake, so that would be people that are from Bøverdalen. So it has largely to do with, the period of time when more territories opened up for immigration, and Bøverdalen was a little later in the game than the mass immigration starting, probably 1880 was the highest amount of people immigrating. But yeah, I do remember Fergus Falls.
And then could you tell us a little bit more about your artistic process? How is it that you've created these beautiful, vibrant artworks?
Oh, thank you for using the word vibrant. Okay, so it's when I returned from Norway to Minnesota, I felt like a fish out of the water. I was, outside of my context with my painter friends, and it was pretty abstract and intellectual. And I just thought I have to start back from basics. So I started to paint landscape on location. Okay. My brother gave me a small easel and I went out. And then here's the really life-changing little aspect. There was a Hungarian painter that I so appreciate, Béla Petio, who lived in St. Cloud. And he said, "Your technique does not match your vision." And I said, well, if I practice more, but that wasn't what it meant. It was, he taught me to slap down a bold underpainting in acrylic and then to time it, do it in a half an hour. and then set up my palette with oil. The next step would be to paint with oil on top of it. But he taught me, I call it grease lightning, that I wouldn't have any resistance on the canvas. So it's two different oils and turpentine and Damar varnish, and my brush can fly. So I could actually keep up with, rolling clouds. I can capture things really quickly. So that answers the business about vibrancy. The other thing is to be right out in the middle of nature. I am bored to death with photos. It does not interest me to work from photos, but it's a bit of adrenaline and excitement, and I feel like nature takes over. I call it my dance partner. It takes my hand and leads the way, and I kind of in a state of abandonment when I'm painting. So what better place to experience that than Bøverdalen, So.